Hello and welcome to the Friday thoughtbot live stream. We're going to be working on some real development work on a real production system today, starting from scratch on a new feature. And I'm joined by two colleagues from our Europe, West Asia, and Africa region. Why don't you both introduce yourselves? Demeter?
Sure, I can go first. I'm Demeter. I live in Switzerland, and I'm a developer and team lead at thoughtbot.
Welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, hi everyone. Yes, Lola, and I'm a thoughtbot designer here in thoughtbot. It's so good to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. So let me share my screen. And remember, feel free to let us know you're here and say hi in the comments. Questions are always welcome throughout, either about something that we're working on. Sometimes we get stumped or need ideas. And so we want to hear your ideas and your help as well. And other times, maybe something we're working on jogs a question in your mind and it's completely unrelated. Just drop it in the chat and we'll do our best to answer it. And I would be remiss if I didn't also call out that today we're going to be working on designing and developing a feature from scratch. That's exactly what we do every day at thoughtbot. So if you're interested in working with us to add features to an existing application or create a new application, web or mobile, we are available. And you can do that and get in touch with us at thoughtbot.com/hire us. So I am going to share my screen here and give an overview of what we're going to work on today. Demeter and Lola use this system that we're working on, but and so we're all three users of this system, and but we didn't like most things. We haven't done a lot of prep. This is real work that we're going to dive into, and so the overview that I'm giving right now is also the overview that we're doing for ourselves as we start this work. So definitely both of you or in the chat, if you have questions, clarifying questions, ideas, that kind of thing, let me know. So we have a system at thoughtbot called Hub. Here I have it running locally. This is the application we've been working on the stream for the last couple of weeks. And we call it Hub because it's like a hub and then it connects to a lot of different systems that we use. That's where the name comes from. So one of the things it does is it does all of our scheduling and for client projects. And it also connects to our CRM as well. And so what we're looking at here is a view of something that's in our CRM called an opportunity. And as we work on talking with a client about doing their work, we're going to develop some estimates about how long the project is going to be and what skills it's going to use. And so we have this concept of estimates here. It's basically building out, Rails developer for 1 week, a web designer for let's make this a little bit more realistic, 12 weeks. A web designer for 12 weeks, and an iOS developer for 12 weeks. So, and you can add additional ones here. And so we're building out what a potential team might look like for this project. And then we have the concept of staffing. And this is a view that the idea here is to give you an overview of who might be able to work on this project. So there's a summary of the information up here. You can see it has 12 weeks of Rails, 12 weeks of web design, and 12 weeks of iOS development. And then it does a snapshot of the scheduling system showing available people. These people are available. They have nothing on their schedule who match these skills across our different teams. So Rails, here's the people who are available in Boost, Fusion, Ignite, Liftoff, Mission Control. I have show all teams checked here. So if I uncheck that, it looks like this one's not associated with any particular team, so no assigned team. But and you can tentatively staff someone on this. So you could say, okay, Kevin's available. I'm going to tentatively staff Kevin on this project, and then it'll show up as tentatively staffed on Kevin's schedule. You can see it has an estimated start date of November 16th, and you can see that it tentatively on this project for that time. So that's and you can see it's Rails 4 days per week for 12 weeks. And then if we scroll all the way down, we see the web design, and it shows the people who match that skill who are available. And if we scroll all the way down, it shows the iOS people who are available. You can choose show all people, and that'll show you people who aren't available. Right now we don't have this is test data, a fake data, so we don't have a lot of stuff on the schedule. So I think everyone's pretty much available. Any questions so far? It's okay if the answer is no. I just wanted to do a check.
Questions always come to me in the depth of the implementation.
Cool. Lola? It's okay if the answer is
as well.
Okay. So tentatively staffing and these opportunities are completely separate from the schedule. Something that's tentatively staffed will show up on the person's schedule. So if we go over to Kevin and then we click on schedule, you can see starting November 20th, tentatively staffed there. But that's not the same as actually being staffed on something. And in fact, this schedule view shows opportunities. I think I forget exactly what it does. But it shows once something is actually won and becomes a project, eventually the tentative staffing isn't even shown on the schedule because it's no longer relevant. It's a project that needs to be staffed. And what happens at that point currently is Hub creates a to-do item on a Basecamp to-do list. And then people go on and they discuss the staffing of that item, but it's for the whole project. And then they check off the to-do item there. So my idea and what we want to try to accomplish is to connect the dots between the estimates on an opportunity and the skills and the timeline and who was tentatively staffed and all that stuff to the actual scheduling process and eliminate that Basecamp to-do list. And so whether we use estimates or whether we introduce a new sort of object that captures the staffing needs, it'll be somewhat similar to that estimate. And I think that it'd be cool if eventually there's shortcuts for, well, this is the person who was tentatively staffed on it, and we are going to do that. So one click button, be able to schedule them. I don't think we can do it automatically, but I think we could create shortcuts for doing it. Or saying, no, we're not going to do that tentative staffing. This is the person to do it. And, a couple of clicks and schedule it. So I created a FigJam board. I don't know if we want to jump over there now or we just want to sort of talk through what we think we might do. I have one idea, and I've been thinking about this a little bit longer than you all have. So I'll share my idea, and then, so if we can envision, well, they are estimates that need to be staffed, or it's a new model called like staffing need or something like that. Those exist, or we're using the estimates, and we have the concept of whether they're done or not. Then we could display them right at the top of the schedule. Like when you go to the schedule view, if there are outstanding staffing needs, they could be right at the top of the schedule, and potentially they could be filtered. So you would say, okay, I select Fusion, and I filter the schedule to Fusion. And what I'm seeing there is the staffing needs relevant to Fusion right at the top of the schedule. What I'm worried about with that is that there could be too many of them. And it's like, no, I just want to look at the schedule, and I've got this big list. We can make it collapsible, but I'm not sure whether that's the way to go. Would it be better to just make sort of like a call out when there are staffing needs, and you click on it to go to a separate page where we list out all the staffing needs, and you can drill into them and comment on them and talk about them and that kind of thing. Oh, I'll also add one bit of thing. Another group of people at thoughtbot right now is adding the concept of a rotation request to Hub, to be able to, when you're confirming your time each week, say, I'm ready to rotate off this project. And that would be something that could be highlighted in the same place as these staffing needs as well. It could even eventually create a staffing need from the rotation request. Thoughts?
On the link to that last one that you're talking about, shall we ignore that for now?
We should ignore that for now, yeah, because it's in development. We can incorporate it after we do this. Lola, do you have any thoughts about where this could live, or any thoughts about how we can sort of experiment and figure out how we want it to be?
Yes, so I think the first one you mentioned it's going to work, and I'm also thinking of something like an accordion. If an accordion is going to work for what you just said now, but either way, I think we can just experiment on the FigJam board, so we get to see how it's going to look like.
Sure. Yeah, we have this. This is sort of a hiding and closing of the filters, so we could do that as an option. And the other thing that we've been doing, that's a bad example because the test data isn't set up correctly. The other thing that we've been doing a lot lately is I like using the dialogue, not dialogue.
Okay, this is a drop down.
Yeah, but it's the native HTML. What is that?
Summary
and details.
Details.
Yeah. So you get that functionality. So that's another option. Okay, so let's go over to FigJam then, and oh, it automatically populated with a brainstorming sticky notes. I think we just want to delete that, huh? I think we just want no new template. So what are you looking for, Lola?
Yeah, I'm trying to see if we can find a template that will fit in for what we're trying to do.
Another, I wonder if part of the reason why is because we're in FigJam rather than, oh, we might be on the right direction here. Rather than, I was going to say rather than Figma itself.
Okay, so if we don't see anything related to what we're trying to do, we could start from scratch and probably use those tools that we have already. I
Yeah.
think that would be, yeah.
Okay, that sounds fine with me. Now, how do you like to do this? Do you like to just wireframe, just use lines, or do you like to sort of take a screenshot and bring over the screen?
Yes, we can do something like a wireframing, yeah, instead of having a sketch. Yeah, so it will be quite visible enough on the screen than sketch
Mm-hmm.
it. Yeah.
Good morning, Carlos. Thanks for joining us. Would it be easier if we went over to an actual Figma file?
So can you come again?
Do you think we should go over to a Figma file rather than a FigJam file?
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
I think that maybe that would be
Yeah.
better. And we're going to get a little bit more drawing tools because FigJam is really about more whiteboarding and sticky notes and that kind of thing. Okay. Do you want to drive, Lola?
Okay. So what options do we say we're going for?
I think well, we could either choose desktop or paper. I think either one of those works.
Can you repeat that again?
We could just choose desktop or paper
Okay.
just as a frame.
Okay. We can go for a desktop frame. Yeah.
This part is fascinating to me because I often see mock-ups already or wireframes that already exist,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe give some feedback on them or get to implement them. But I rarely see them from scratch. And having tried Figma myself, I felt since I didn't know the tool, I felt very, very slow in starting. So I'm really looking forward to seeing someone who spends more time in it, how they work with the tool.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So I think we have a comment.
Yeah, so I can recap the project that we're working on while maybe you Lola can lay the baseline wireframing out. So we are working on implementing in that internal system that we have for scheduling, the ability to raise up the scheduling needs that we have on a project and to be able to see them and to schedule them fast and sort of check them off to be done. So what we're doing now is we're trying to just baseline wireframe out some ideas of where we might put things.
Yeah. So okay, comment. I need to get a paper and a pencil before I have it. Sorry, give me a minute.
Okay. So it's okay. What we can do is just draw. So what we're doing here is we're sort of operating on the assumption that it might make sense to put this on the schedule view. So I think we can. Oops. I accidentally always click on frame instead of the box drawing tool because they're right next to each other and they look the same when you first start to do them. It's sort of annoying. Did I lose the there we go. So I think Lola started sketching on paper, which I also think at some point might is that what you started doing? or making, or are you just making notes?
I'm trying to sketch out something.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the first time that we're actually doing some design work on the stream, and it's interesting. I feel like we should play music or something like that. In fact, let's try. Daydreaming is good for design work.
Yeah. So can you share the screen again? The help screen.
The what's oh the yeah. If it's easy, we can actually move it right here, so you'll still be able to see it. It's just not on the stream.
So I think I can't type from my screen.
Yeah, in tuple, you have to choose keyboard and mouse, if I remember right.
Okay, let me see.
And I suppose if it's easier for you, you could also, I could give you a link in Slack to this, and you could do it on your computer.
Yeah, that's fine.
Do you want to do that?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. You should actually. Hey, Rob, thanks for watching. Welcome.
No, thank you. I have access now.
So what are you thinking about or doing now?
Okay, so well, can you help share the off screen again?
What are you trying to replicate? now, or add.
Okay, so I'm trying to add like a secondary button and also like a filter. We already have a filter already. Then okay, so we have add assignment, add reservation. So how I was thinking if we could make we should make one of we should put more attention to a button. So it could be maybe add assignments or add reservation. So one is going to be like a primary and a secondary button.
So one of the ways that I sometimes do things, let me show you what I sometimes do. So I have a thing. It's the same keystrokes as Mac OS, but you'll see it's clean shot. So it's Command Shift 4, and then that's gonna and so when we're trying to replicate a screen quickly in Figma from an existing screen, you can sort of be like, oh, okay, I'm taking these components so that, and you don't even need to get it perfect, but then it gives you an idea of especially if there's items that you're either going to touch or not going to touch, then you can do this. And so you can, in that way, replicate existing screens a little bit in different ways. So now, we have the button, and if you want to get really creative, you can use the inspector. And then what I'm doing here is I'm deleting the contents of the button. What I need to do is if you want to get really creative, you can even do well, that's funny. That didn't do what I thought it was going to do. But I know I can't just do that. Oh, I guess I can. So I just created a blank button there. And so now we can sort of get the blank button and we can put them, and by using the existing components, it's a little bit sort of easier to see what's what because you have them. And then you can do things like put the text on it and make new buttons. So just, and then you can use, say, be like, okay, I want a secondary button here. So I know, I'm thinking of what page has secondary buttons on it. No, not that page. Not that page. Here's some. So that'll give us a secondary button to use as well. And you can also remove the like just cover the text if you want to make it blank. That's another way to do it. Is that helpful? Oh, I meant to group them, but
So I think the buttons we have there is add assignments and add reservation, right?
yeah, the if we bring up that screen again, it's the buttons are add reservation and add assignments, and right now reservations are time off, so add assignments takes you to a separate form to add the assignments. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
It doesn't need to be perfect.
Saying it for us to have the. Okay, Tommy's asking a question.
Oh, are we trying to center a div? I think that might be a sarcastic question or not. I tell me no. That is not what we're doing. We are wireframing out some potential things and changes to and feature additions to the screen.
So I was thinking if there was a need for us to see how they had reservation.
Say that again.
So I was thinking if there is still need for us to add reservation.
I'm not following. I'm sorry. What were you saying?
Yeah, I'm talking about the button,
Mm-hmm.
the add reservation button. If there is still need for us to focus more on it.
So if I'm understanding correct, your question is about the hierarchy or the information hierarchy of these buttons. Which one is more important than the others?
Exactly. So, John, I really can't say if it's reservation or assignment.
I don't know. When the reason why these buttons are all both green is because they're both primary actions on this page. adding a reservation and adding an assignment. But it's like, but as a user of the system, I come to this page when I want to add an assignment, and I come to this page when I want to add a reservation.
Okay, so we're just going to prioritize one.
Yeah.
Let me see.
Then I think you're doing assignments more.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm wondering then, where do the what did we call them, estimations? Where do they come in? That's a less frequent use, right?
It happens. Oh, so when we have this in place, it technically happens every team once a week during the scheduling meeting. And that's another reason why I wasn't entirely sold on adding them directly to this page, because we're really only supposed to we want to defer scheduling conversations to the scheduling meeting. And if it's in your face every time you come to the schedule when you don't need it, that might be wasted. That might be a waste.
Okay, so I need to see the screen again.
No problem.
So instead of when I click on the add assignment, instead of taking them to another screen, what about we have?
Right, it is taking you to another screen, yeah.
Exactly. So what if we do something like showing them like a side menu? That way, I think it could also reduce the number of steps as well.
Are you suggesting that when you get to add assignment, you could actually see a list of the staffing needs here?
Yes, sure.
That's interesting. That hadn't even occurred to me.
Okay. So what do you think?
It makes sense. You are going to be able to click into them and leave comments on them and have discussions. So I think what you would see is a list. Like you would just see like a list of them. It'd be like we'd add a header. We'd add a horizontal line to this screen to offset the header. And then there'd be like a new section called staffing needs, and it would be collapsible or openable.
Exactly.
And you'd see the list, and you'd be able to click into them and discuss them and that kind of thing. I envision you'd be able to see who might be good, similar to what we were looking at on the estimates on the staffing screen of an opportunity.
Yeah. Let me try that. Okay, so I think we have some comments.
Rob asks, is the primary purpose of the page to read the schedule or make changes to it? And I think that the answer is it depends. I think most of the time, the purpose of the page is to read the schedule. And then once a week, the entire purpose of the page is to make changes to it. As one of the people in the scheduling meeting, Rob, and using this view, do you have an opinion? So that is something that I hadn't considered, that basically we would, when you're like, okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add assignments, and then that is where you see the staffing needs, and you could click into them, you could view it, and then you can say, okay, I want to staff this, and it would sort of take you back to this screen with the details filled out. And then when you do create assignments, it marks that staffing need as done and filled. Yeah, so Rob says, Rob is one of the software development directors at thoughtbot, and so I appreciate Rob's perspective. When adding reservations or assignments, I tend to go to an individual schedule via their profile. So yeah, so let's just map out that flow would be, we're looking at Billy, we click on schedule, and then what you would do, what Rob's saying is then click on add assignments for, and actually there's a ticket in the backlog for, at that point, populating Billy if you go through that flow. So I think that's what Rob is saying. So the other thing that Rob says is I look at the larger view to get an idea of the current state of team schedules. And I guess that is a little bit of my concern with having it on this page, because if what you're doing to make the decision is looking at the overall schedule, you might lose that. If you have to go all the way back up to look at the schedule for everybody else in order to make a decision.
I have a comment about this.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to forget that we have large screens and we can have more than one window side by side.
True. That is a very good point, and that is what I would do if I was working locally. I think one of the interesting things about this is it could be no, I guess for the remote for the scheduling meeting that happens, it's remote, and people don't and people tend to share their window as they're talking about the schedule. So people tend not to share their whole screen. They tend to share the window for the browser. And it's interesting that might influence the way that we do it. But I think you're right, because in theory, you could even do that. You could even do like, okay, I'm looking at the schedule. Okay, I'm going to add an assignment, and then you break it out into another tab, and you're like looking at the staffing needs, and you have the schedule over here. Rob's being the counterpoint and helpful today. Rob says, I work off a 16-inch laptop with no external monitor. Rob, we have to get you an external monitor. That's really the solution to this problem. Problem solved. Well, okay, so let's think about ways of moving, what other ideas, and then also what occurs to me is, if we're settling on like that there will be a list of staffing needs, whether it's here or whatever, then that might be enough to actually move forward. And then we say, okay, we know that there's going to be a list, so that might be enough to actually move forward, and we can then experiment with where we put the list. What do you think?
So I'm literally thinking of looking at the best position, right? And also when it comes to the information architecture, I feel looking at this is quite complicated.
Yes.
Because looking at it, because UX wise, I think having it on this is it going to work? I'm looking at the other side because it's coming to my head before was if we can add it after the schedule filters, right? But UX wise, I'm looking at it if it's something that is really feasible, or maybe when they click on the assignments, other assignment. Okay, so I think
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Dimitar, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go.
Okay, so I'm thinking one thing we can also do is for us to know the list of the staffing list that we need to add, if that would also work. So we get to know where we want to fix it, either on this screen or when they click on add assignment.
How do you want to do that? We could do it in Figma. We could also like use some HTML and make basically add fake HTML to the actual page that I've got running locally.
Okay. That could work.
What do you think?
So I think we should try the HTML first. Let's see how that is going to work.
Okay. So I know that sounds good. So I know it was bugging you to have those multiple green buttons. So let's do that first. Let's create a branch for our work. So we have a schedule filter partial. I'm looking for the button. So the oh, did I not it's not not oh, that's the close button. The filter button. This page is slow to load, especially since there's I didn't realize there's so many test users created in the database. So it's like really slow to load locally because it doesn't have any of it's rendering everything.
If we're going to be working a lot on this page and refreshing a lot, we might consider deleting some of the users in the test data. And it also makes me wonder how this performs in production.
It doesn't perform great, but we have lots of caching on the individual cells of the schedule. So, but in development, so that would be another thing that I could do. Is do you remember the rake task to turn on caching? Rail?
No, you create a file, I think.
Yeah, temp caching dev. So now if we refresh, should do it one time and then let's see if it actually, it's not any faster. I'm not sure why. Do you need to restart the server?
No, that's the whole point of it. Creating the file and removing the file is the way to toggle it. I said that very confidently, but actually it's an assumption. The task is called dev cache. All right, so Chad's having audio problems and he's going to restart Chrome and he'll be back with us in a minute. Lola, I had a question. We were focusing right now on the entry point to this workflow. Do you think we could turn the problem on its head and assume that we're already at the place where we're going to be doing the center of the work, like the main thing, and then figure out how to get there later? Does that make sense?
I think I did not hear what you said last. Can you repeat that?
Also for Chad. Welcome back, Chad. I was wondering, we were now trying to figure out how to onboard onto that not onboard, but how to get into that feature. But wherever the button is might not be the core of the workflow. I'm assuming it's a separate screen. So what if we started from that screen itself and then figured out how to fit it into the rest of the application later?
Okay. So I think that's a good point. No, I think we're looking more on the point of entry, right? So when you click on hard assignments, the sets. Okay, so I think we need to set that very well. And I'm not sure if leaving it on the side menu is really going to work. Not sure. Okay, let me check.
So I'm back. And I assume you can hear me now.
Yeah, sure.
Good. I made the buttons more subtle. So Dimitar, you were saying if what ultimately we're going to end up with is another screen that we could just potentially go right to that screen.
Yeah, something like that. Often when working, when I feel stuck, I try to look at the problem from a different perspective. And so that would be my perspective in this case. I think we were onto something. I just that's my way of working. The more perspectives I bring in, the more I start making connections. Because I don't. If you focus too much on one path, then you get tunnel vision on it.
Yeah. So, so what you're are you proposing making a new index page for staffing needs? And starting from there, or are you suggesting we just throw them onto this schedule page? Either way is okay. I just want to clarify.
I was going to go with a new page, but
that's fine. It's probably easier, especially since this page is slow to load.
Yeah.
So can I get the question again?
Yeah, so we're trying to find a way forward, and we were thinking that we might create a new page, and I don't know exactly actually where we go from there, but use that page as a canvas for the actual work of. Well, actually, that's a question for chat. Can you recenter us? Like in the introduction, you were talking about the workflow with the checklist, with the to-dos and so on. How would that fit in here?
I think ultimately, what you want to do is you want to look at some need. Okay, I need someone with Rails. It's going to be 12 weeks, that kind of thing, and then say, I'm going to staff that. And then that concept of needing to do that goes away, and it shows up on their schedule as an assignment.
So what if we had a list of staffing needs, and each one had an action button, a primary action button, which would then lead you to the page where you enter the details. And then once you complete that, you go back either to the schedule, or maybe you go back to the list of staffing needs, and work through the rest. Even saying that, I have the question of how many of these one needs to do.
So that example or that to-do list that I showed before is the real one. And what I'm hoping to is you can see there's things here from September. I'm hoping that, and one of the reasons, my theory about why that happens is because they're out of sight, and people forget about them, and you don't really get notifications about overdue things in the same way and that kind of thing. So I'm hoping that if we make it a little bit more integrated into the workflow, that people will say, oh, this doesn't need, even if the result is this no longer is a staffing need, and I'm going to archive it or delete it or something like that.
Yeah. I don't know how, but I'm just going to say what comes to my mind. It's if we had this screen, but on here it said 2 projects need staffing, and it's a link or a button, and then you get to that overview of with the details. That might be enough.
Or better still, we could have it as a tertiary button.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think tertiary button is going to work. Yeah, it should, because looking at it, there is not so much of information on the screen, so it's not as if it's cluttered already. So if we have that, I think that will work. Yeah.
Okay. So then let's move forward with that then. So we have our branch here. And so the first thing I'm going to do is start a feature spec. And we'll call it scheduling staffing needs. Well, actually, does staffing needs make sense as a name? And if anybody in the chat has ideas, we're open to naming ideas.
What have you been calling it in your meetings when doing that?
I always call it staffing. And
I'll
that's what
take
we're doing is we're staffing a project.
Yeah, I'll take a look at our documentation, and I'll take a look at maybe notes from previous meetings or agenda items.
You mean you're going to actually do that now?
Yeah, in the background.
Okay, cool. So
makes sense.
I'll move forward with that as the name, and then we can. So what we're doing here is a fairly standard test-driven workflow, and I'm starting from the feature spec so that we're getting the flow outside in, and that's going to help us focus on the particular functionality that we're adding as well. So yeah, user schedules staffing needs.
That's what we have in the docs, by the way. It does say staffing needs. I think it's a natural phrase.
Okay. So we need a person, and then we visit the schedule path as person.user. And I think we're going to need, so staffing needs will be for a project. And then, so you'll click on, and we can always change this, but you'll make it to the schedule. You'll click on, what did we say as the text of the button?
And project, 2 projects need staffing.
So it'll find it, I believe it'll find it by partial text. So we don't need to put the number. We don't need to know the number there now. Actually, we can, if we add it, then that's a spec coverage for that functionality, right? One project needs staffing.
There are 2 comments in the chat. First from Tommy about naming being a hard problem.
Yeah.
For sure. And the other one from Mitchell. Hi, Mitchell. Documentation for the win. Yeah, I didn't say explicitly where I was looking at, but we have a handbook for the company. Some of the contents of the handbook are in the public playbook on thoughtbot.com/playbook. No, sorry. I need to find that URL, but it's out there. And the handbook documents how we work. And so this is where we have this information.
So I'm just making a guess at what some of the the things that we want to have on this page. So like it would be the project name. We'd expect to see the project name. And we would expect to see so one thing I'm not sure about, I'm honestly not sure about, is if whether when we think about staffing, we want to think about the whole project holistically, or whether we actually just want to see, I need a Rails developer for this project, I need a designer for this project, and they could be the same project or not, and then we're filling those line items. I'm actually not sure about that, and maybe we don't know yet until we see it. If either of you have any thoughts that.
Okay, so when you click on the button, then we
Mhm.
can have something like okay, we could have like a card, right? Like
Yep.
it's two cards side by side, and we have one for designers, one for developers. So they get to get more information about what we are looking for. It might be designer. Okay, for example, we have maybe we're looking for two designers, we're looking for two developers. They get to see more details on the card. So and for us to also reduce space, I think we could do something like a side by side cards. um, Let me see if I can come up with something.
That's a good idea. The thing is we actually don't have, skills are not associated with whether they're design, development, or product management or whatever. Um, so there's no way to know that right now in the data. We only have skills. So it's like Rails and web design are two skills. Um, there's no other indicator that of who would do that other than the people who have those skills.
Okay, okay.
And I guess to go further into that, even a distinction between, as you're saying, maybe Rails, and then maybe there's a need for data science pipelines or something, and those are different skills and might not be covered by the same person.
Yeah, the way that we handle that in estimates is that estimates can have many skills. And so the idea is that you are, say, each line item is a person you would staff on the project. And so if you really need a Rails person with data science experience, you would, or a Rails person with React experience, like it needs to be a full stack developer. You can do both. And so it's like Rails and React on that line item. If you can do it more flexibly with multiple people, then you would make line items for each one. And then if we go over to the staffing screen there, then then you can see it says, and 12 weeks of Rails and React. And then it has a block for Rails and React, and it'll only show you the people who have both of those skills because they were on the same line item. I'm not saying that that's what we need to maintain, but that is the idea behind the way it currently works. So let's just go with like what we see is like Rails, something like Rails for project name. So we have the concept of a staffing for a skill. And then person. Yeah, so it'll have, I think it's taking this from some other code that we have in this app too. So it will have a start date. It doesn't have an end date. What staffing needs will have is like how many weeks they'll go for, I believe. Okay, so we have a person, project, a skill. We've have the concept of a staffing need. We visit the schedule. We click on one project needs staffing. And then we have the content. So actually, we could, in theory, click on that, which would then take us to what we were saying was, you were saying there'd be a button to like something like create assignment. Is that right? And Dimitar, do you think that you would want, for right now, do we want to implement this as like pre-populating this form with the project, a computed start and end date from the number of weeks from this after the start date?
Does the project exist?
The project always exists at this point, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this sounds like the path of least resistance, at least.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I always forget. I think it's, is it find field or is it just field?
I can look it up. Find field, yeah.
So we expect the start date to be the same start date that we had up there. We expect the end date to be, it would be, if it's 3 weeks, it'd be 3 weeks, end of week. So it'd be 3 weeks. The project should be, this isn't going to work, but I'm going to, because that's a Oh no, it's a select in the specs. So the project field should have the project selected. I think everything else does that. So you need to select a person. We'll just do yourself, fill in. It's not fill in for a select box, right? It's choose. Is that right? Now I'm
choose. Wait, did you say choose would be for a radio button, check would be for a checkbox?
And for a select.
Select. I think you need to give the name of what you're selecting and then from.
Okay, it is select. It's select. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. And then the button on this page is create assignments. And then we expect that to go to the schedule, right?
I assume this is what we currently have when you create an assignment.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to go over and look at this. We have some specs for the schedule. We don't have anything there. I was just looking to see whether we already had a helper or something for checking to see whether something was on the schedule. Does not look like we do. So we can just make it up. We would see the we can build this out unless later if either of you have ideas.
Having this test more or less fleshed out gives us, I think, a perfect opportunity to take a break.
Sure. Yeah. So we'll take a quick break, 5 minutes, and we will be back, and we'll pick up where we left off. All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I was worried that my audio cut out again. Welcome back. So when we left, we had just a first pass of our feature spec.
Okay, so there is a comment from Rob. What do you think about using formulae to abstract the capybara DSL one? Okay.
Well, I've never used it before, so I don't know. I don't have any opinions. Do either of you?
I have seen the library. I've seen the README of the library, but I've never used it myself. I might have contributed to a project where it was being used, but I've never made that choice myself.
Mm-hmm. So we have no real firsthand experience. So, but maybe it's, oh, Rob, are you asking the question because you have an opinion on it? If you do, put it in the chat. I'd love to see it. So what do we say we run this spec and let it guide us to the next step? I'm hitting my keyboard shortcut to run the specs and it's not doing anything. That's weird. Let's just go over. It's there.
Oh, is the file name correct? Does it need to be?
Oh, it's missing. You're absolutely right. It's missing the spec at the end of the. Good call. There we go. Okay, so factory not registered, staffing need. Someone recently broke most of the factories out into their own files. So now but they didn't do all of them for some reason. So there's some factories in this file, and then there's other factories, each in their own file. For right now, let's just add this too. So I think project is going to be required. Starts on is going to be required. Ends on is going to be no. What we're expecting is a certain number of weeks. I suppose skills is going to be required, right? What were the other things that I said? Was that everything? Project skills, start date, and weeks. Yeah. And we're going to run that. And it's going to tell us that a staffing need model doesn't exist. Uninitialized constant staffing need. So I'm always curious, do you also type out the stuff by hand, or do you use a generator, Dimitar?
I always type it out by hand.
Yeah, me too.
I've seen people use some snippets in editors.
Okay, so let's run the spec again. It's going to tell us there's no table, I think. Yep. So I do use a generator for migrations. Do you? You have to, right? Because of the ID that needs to be, the timestamp that needs to be there.
The way I use generators is I stop here. So I pick the name of the migration, and then I fill in all the details in the file itself. I don't use the so you can provide fields, and that Rails would write part of the migration for you. I don't use that part.
Yeah, I don't use that part either. So this is interesting. So I tried to run this, and there is a previous migration called create staffing needs. So we used to have a staffing needs model, and what that was is estimates. So at some point, I renamed staffing needs to estimates. Or actually, I guess it was Rick did the work. And the idea there was they aren't actual staffing needs, they're estimates of what we're going to need to staff. And we wanted to reserve staffing needs for actual needs that need to be staffed. So we renamed staffing needs to estimates. But we can't use that. Apparently, we can't use that same name for the migration.
So it says you can force to replace or skip the ignore the conflicted file. What would happen if both exist?
Both flags?
Sorry, both files.
Oh, both migrations. I don't know. It seems like it'd be okay because you have the timestamp.
But the if you open the migration, doesn't the migration name isn't the migration name also the class name? And I think if you had two classes named the same thing, maybe that would cause a problem. Or you would be reopening the same class.
Yeah, you're right. The timestamp's not in here. So it's the same class. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to need to name our migration something else and then
add staffing needs.
Thank you. Perfect.
We have a response from Rob concerning formulaic. Rob says, formulaic may remove some of the confusion we had around the select in the test, in the capybara test. And also he points out that we have formulaic in suspenders, which is thoughtbot's well, it's a project in flux, but the idea is a sort of generator that would generate a base app, or now we're shifting to a series of generators that could augment a default Rails app to fit the needs and conventions used by thoughtbot. And I think this is where I had actually seen formulaic, probably in the README of suspenders. And we may remove it from that, but the direction in which suspenders is going is that you don't get everything by default, but rather you can run a series of generators. So something like, please add FactoryBot to this project, and then please add Heroku integration, and please add this and that, because we're finding that more and more of our projects have individual needs. Like, you don't always use Heroku, for example, and so you don't want those files by default. So formulaic might be the same. What if you have an API only app? Then you don't need it.
Cool. So I've created the migration for adding staffing needs with the project weeks, starts on, ends on. It occurred to me as I was writing this that, like, we're gonna have commenting on this, but we might want a description where you can type in more details about the need, or you could just leave a comment on it. And then, so we also need the relationship to skills, and that's a has and belongs to many, or a has many through. We tend to prefer just has many through. And we already have a create staffing need skills migration. So we're going to need to call add staffing needs skills.
So kind of to recap, or to give a context of what we're doing right now, we started by thinking about the user interface, or let's say the how the user uses the application. Then we try to capture that in a automated test. And now we're trying to run the test over and over again. And each time we make a little bit of progress, the test fails at the next step. What we found out is that we don't have some of the models in Rails, and we don't have some of the tables that we need for the new feature. So we are doing iterations on that, fixing or creating a small thing, rerunning the test, and letting us be guided by the test.
Cool. So we get undefined method project equals for staffing need. So spec models. So I know what I need to do is add has many a belongs to relationship to staffing need for project. But before I do that, I'm gonna introduce a spec for the behavior. was weird. It even knew. It's watching. So I only ran the feature spec again. So I expected to have a belong to.
I have a question about that.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen projects that test relations and some that do not.
Mm-hmm.
And similarly, kind of for validations, I mean, from you using shoulda and writing those tests, I can see your stance. But do you care to describe a bit the trade-offs of doing that?
I think it all comes down to why you're doing test-driven development, and there's really multiple reasons why. One is it's guiding what we're doing step by step, and it's making it so that we know what to do, but we're also specifying the behavior. Welcome back, Lola. We're also specifying the behavior, and for a while people would call what we're doing like behavior driven development, or BDD. And that is where, like, you're describing the behavior. It's not so much about testing as you're describing the behavior and then implementing the behavior, and then you're preventing regressions. So and you get the benefit when you're doing this of both of those things. You're going from the outside in, writing the behavior, specifying the behavior, and then implementing the behavior. And then when you do have a regression, you have a spec which is focused at the level that is going to make it fastest to figure out where the regression was. If you only have the feature spec, it might not be obvious what is actually broken, and the model specs are a way to be able to pinpoint that.
What would break this? Maybe not this. Yeah, this type of test that we are writing right now should belong to project. Would a Rails upgrade break that somehow?
Well, for example, if you were saying that it should belongs to, Rails changed the behavior of a belongs to be required. That was an add-on feature. Like, you needed to enable it when you were upgrading from 6 to 7. But if you were writing the specs to be explicit, then that, in theory, I guess, could break if you had enabled it but not changed the relationship. I also think, not to go on too big of a tangent, I'm just curious I'm curious whether shoulda knows belongs to is required by default. And so if you say optional true, whether that is going to break the spec. I don't know. Yeah, it did. So expecting staffing need to have a belongs to association called project, and the record to fail validation if the project is unset. Either the association should have been defined with required true, or there should be a presence validation on the project, because that's what the default behavior of a belongs to in Rails is. So if if you're making it optional, it's going to point out that that's incorrect.
What's interesting with this one in particular, I remember also a change in Rails. I think it was between Rails 4 and 5, or 4.2 and 5, where it became required, wasn't it? Anyhow, now with hindsight, we know this could cause a problem, but I bet for years nobody thought to say it was required.
Right. So now the failure we get is undefined method skills equals. So many skills through. It was auto completing it and I ignored it. There we go. Is dependent destroy what we want? Yes.
So if we remove staffing need, we also remove the record in the join table.
Right. So this is going to fail because the way I wrote this spec is incorrect. So it's failing for a different reason, but I'm just going to fix the problem as I see it. So staffing needs have the dependent destroy, but skills doesn't. Okay, so what we're getting is couldn't find a valid model for staffing needs skill. We don't have one. So let's create that. So this is where I I wouldn't necessarily write a model spec for this class because it's just it's doesn't have any behavior other than belonging to the staffing need and the skill, and that is already exercised through this. But I could totally see another person doing it. But I wouldn't necessarily do that. Okay, so that model spec passes now, and we can go back to our feature spec and run it, and it's going to give us the next thing to do. Undefined method start date for staffing need. Start date equals. So when we were creating the migrations, I ended up calling this starts on. Because I strongly prefer any date fields to end in _on in a Rails app. Did I make a mistake here when I created add staffing needs? Yeah, I gave it an ends on date, and that's not right.
We want the start date and the duration.
Yeah, so it's weeks. So Rails DB migrate redo, right? So that goes, reverts it and puts it and runs it again.
But you modified the file, so when it, how does it know to remove the column?
It drops the whole table because the reverse of a create table is dropping the whole table.
Right.
So see, it's right here, drop table staffing need. Oh, it's only doing the last one. So that's not going to work. DB rollback. And then roll back again. Okay, so that's dropping staffing needs. And then okay, so now what we're getting is no root matches. And we're getting it on visit schedule path. Which is not the failure that I expected, but that is interesting. View schedule spec. Oh, it's called schedule index path. That's interesting. Oh, we have I think the reason why is because we have the ability to generate pretty URLs. Like the schedule has a URL builder so that it can, let me show, if you're on the schedule and you filter like by a team, multiple teams, just for example, then the URL is schedule teams / boost ignite / all skills, any skills. So it's like pretty URLs for this. And so that's the schedule index because it's a custom route. I think that's what's happening there.
We have a question in chat about whether we're using Hotwire or React.js.
This app uses Hotwire and Turbo. Thanks. Okay, so unable to find link or button, one project needs staffing. So this is the schedule show page. Here's our buttons to add commitments and reservations. So we had said we were going to, so what do we want? If so this whole view uses a schedule object. I wonder if you should ask the schedule object whether there are staffing needs. And the reason why we might want to do that is because then the staffing needs could potentially be filtered to what you're filtering the schedule to. Is that thinking too far ahead? I think it might be thinking too far ahead. Let's just do the minimum to get the specs to pass. So if there are any staffing needs with an instance variable. Sound good?
What if the minimum thing was always show the button. Trying to play the devil's advocate here.
That would be the minimum thing. Yeah. Do you want to do that?
Yeah, not sure if the what it leads to is very interesting. Because would we want to branch in the, or would we want a special feature spec just for that conditional in the UI, in the view? Probably not. I would probably want to encapsulate that and potentially test in a different type of test.
Yeah. So Lola, how should we emphasize this button? Should it be gray or should it be a totally new color like purple?
Okay, so far we're going to be using like a tertiary button for that. We already have green, and green serve as a primary color, right? And we have gray. Gray serve as a secondary. I think we need another color for it, so we can be able to differentiate between those actions.
Okay. So the
or better still, I don't know if we could use a yellow for the secondary, then a gray for the tertiary button.
that we have these these classes. I don't know what color it's going to be, but the idea is we have a button index for linking to other indexes, button new for linking to new pages, and it gives a standard color scheme for those links. So let's start there and see what color it gives us. I forget what color it is. It might be purple and it might be red. And if it's red, I don't think we want that because red means stop. What was the text that we said? One project needs staffing. You know, I always forget whether the pluralize helper outputs the number and the... I think it does. The pluralize helper... Oh, come on. I tried to register this and the site was down. And so now it's expired. Yeah, so the pluralize helper method outputs both the number and the word. The pluralize string method only outputs the word. So
I don't have much experience with the pluralize method because most projects I've worked on, and this is throughout my entire career, are internationalized. So you rarely write the English string or whatever directly in the view. And there's a subtlety there where you can't pluralize just one word. Depending on the language, the rules for pluralization are different. So you need to approach it entirely differently, where you give it the key to the thing that you want translated, and you might have a count argument or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. So we get undefined local variable or method staffing needs path. So we go to the routes. Just curious. Yeah, we don't already have anything. So we've added a route, and what we should see is the controller is missing. Nope, undefined method size for nil class. So we're not setting staffing needs. Go with an empty array. Now it's going to say 0 projects need staffing. Undefined method, how did I write that? Undefined method pluralize for the
I think you inverted the argument order.
thanks.
It's a very confusing error method though, because it's an error somewhere in the internals of pluralize.
Yeah. So undefined method, I wanted to check the color of the button, but it says undefined method size for nil class. I wonder if yeah, so that's a little confusing because the index page renders show, and the show action is another valid thing as well. So we're going to need to do that. So yeah, the index is red. That's not great. What color were you saying would be better, Lola?
Yes, so I was saying if we could do something like, or better still, instead of us having like a full button, we could have like an underline. So which makes it like a tertiary button. So just underline underneath the text. Do you get what I'm saying?
I do, yeah. So just a normal link, not a button at all, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Exactly.
I think in this class we have, let me think. In the classes, I think we have, we like the word subtle. Yeah. I'm curious what this does. Yeah, so the default button just is completely no styling, just padding around it. So that makes that a little bit better.
Okay, so we could also add like we could add more emphasis on the button. Yeah. So on the line. Yeah. So we can just make the we can increase the hierarchy of the text. Either like medium. I think medium is better instead of having it to have like a regular text. So it's quite obvious that it's a button.
So what are you suggesting?
Yes, I'm suggesting that we increase the hierarchy of the text. So from regular, we could increase it to like medium.
Oh, the weight, you mean?
Yeah, the way.
So we are using Tailwind on this application. I think it's not often that I set something to medium. don't know if that's right. Did that do anything? That did do something. Yeah.
Yes.
It's better.
Should we go more or less? Good for now.
Yeah.
I guess we're getting to the level of complexity on the screen where we need 3 levels of attention, and we may not have that in many places in Hub. So this may be a new pattern.
Yeah. Yeah, potentially. I like this though, because then that gives us the ability when there is no staffing, like it's always there, right? It's not something that goes away and comes back. You know that this is where it clues you in. The 0, we could live without the 0 and we'll get rid of it eventually and make it like no projects or something like that. But that signals this is where you go to find that information, and it's always there. And then when there are projects that need staffing, we can do things to make this more prominent on the page, like a red dot on the link, or make it a actual button, or do those kinds of things. But I prefer, generally speaking, not to hide things, because then you're not training people where they are until they're there.
So then what we were discussing earlier, having we completely remove the conditional from the view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that goes along with that idea. So we have a little bit of another thing that needs to be pluralized here. And for this, we want to use the string helper. Because in order to get the wording right, 0 projects, wait, it should be need. Oh, wait, 0 needs. Wait, 0 projects.
Yeah, it's because it's treating need as a noun, not as a verb.
Right. Okay. So that's not the right way to do that then. Dyson Returns suggests require. What's really required, though? No. I like that. And I recently was, so Dyson Return says, I hit up a thesaurus when I code too much. I don't think it's too much at all. I think that's a good thing to do. And I heard on a podcast recently, someone was saying that ChatGPT is a really good thesaurus, because you can say, like, what are some synonyms for this word? But then you can say, well, I like that one, but can you make something sound a little less or more personal? And it'll give you some words that like have a personal connotation to it. Like it has more meaning behind the things, and you can sort of have a conversation with it to get to the word that you want. Anyway, yes, let's change it to require for now, because then we won't need to change the pluralization. And we want to change. So I think what's going to happen is it's going to unable to find linker button. One project require staffing. One. Oh wait, no, we didn't solve that problem. Require to be correct would also need an S on it when there's one.
So I have a programmer, let's call it programmer brain fix.
Yeah.
Which is staffing required on, then one project, not two projects, and so on. But that actually probably reads worse. If you're trying to find information, having
Right.
the one at the beginning is more important.
Yeah. We just need to move on from this because this is the kind of thing where, so one project with staffing needed, I think will not have the tense problem. Or is it tense? Is it?
Or with staffing needs. All right, I'll drop it.
0 projects with staffing needs, 1 project with staffing needs. Sure, yes. 2 projects with staffing needs. Yes. Yes.
I'll refer back to a comment earlier from Tommy that naming things is one of the hardest things.
But what we could do is it could just be the text could just be staffing needs, and then it could have a badge with the number of staffing needs on it. Okay, let's move forward with this for now. I think what's going to happen is it's going to say, click the link and say, oh no, 1 project with staffing need. Zero projects with staffing needs. Oh, because we're just setting it to an empty array. So I don't yet know why we're doing this in both places, but I'm going to ignore it for now, and we'll fix that, clean that up later somehow. Okay, uninitialized constant staffing needs controller. That's what I was expecting. Touch spec controller. No, we'll just create the controller. App controllers.
Does that need to be staffing needs controller?
Thanks. Yeah. The spec would have pointed it out, but I appreciate it. Yes. The action index could not be found.
You're making a good point. We also have in our internal documentation, we have a guide about pairing and in general interviewing.
Mm-hmm.
And I hesitated before pointing it out because like pointing out a typo can make a person unnecessarily nervous about something or divert attention from something else. And there are ways to, well, disregard that and then have them fix it themselves or find out the solution on their own.
So I'm creating the views directory and I'm touching, the failure we got was a missing index. So you do not need to worry about making me nervous. This is fun. Index.html.erb. Okay, so I touched the file and I'm going to run the specs again. Cool. So unable to find the link or button Rails for project name. So if we go to our UI, just to get on the same page, pun intended, if we click on this now, we get a blank page. And what we're driving towards is having the list of staffing needs there. So what we need is, actually don't know. I think I'm just going to look for a page to use as the example. There's a way to we have a container that needs to be around stuff. Yeah, it's page block, content block, section.
It makes me wonder if the div with class section could be a section element.
This app was created before section elements were a thing, I think. Yeah, you're right. We want to delete all that.
It's out of scope, but I don't know this application much, so as I'm seeing things, I'm commenting, I guess.
Yeah, no, I had a branch. I spiked out two things at one point. I spiked out a helper to output this markup. So you could say just like, give me a page with the title, this, and that was the one thing. This happens in so many places. I ended up scrapping it because like I realized like there's no way I'm gonna be able to go through and find all the differences, because sometimes it's like, so we've started to add like some of them have border bottoms and some of them don't, and all that stuff. So that's one thing, is like helpers for outputting this. The other is changing it to more semantic markup. And with that, we sort of have a similar thing, which is there's so many pages in this application. It would take so long to do it. Prevents me from doing it.
I think it illustrates the issue or the difficulty that existing projects have once they need to introduce a design system.
Mm-hmm. So we have a staffing need. We have a staffing needs. Well, we can just render a partial. You know what? I tend not to do that. I tend, I don't know how you do it, but I tend to start not in a partial and then go to a partial if it actually is warranted. What about you?
Sorry, I got distracted.
It's okay. So should this be in a table? Lola, do you have an opinion on this? Probably don't need it to make the spec pass.
Okay, I think we could have it as lists. Yeah, lists. Yeah, I think.
So what did I say? I said skills, staffing need, skills. I think we actually have a helper to do that, but I'm just doing that to make to get to the specs passing. But I wanted to go back to the spec and check. So what we're looking for is one Rails for project name. Okay. So we have the skills for
So is that a singular staffing need, or are we operating on the staffing needs
Thank you.
collection?
Yeah, thanks. So we don't have anything on the page for real. But if we run the feature spec now, there's a chance that it'll pass. Oh no, there's no chance because I didn't make it a link. Yeah. So unable to find the link or button Rails for project name, but we do have it in the text for the page now. So staffing need path, staffing need. Go ahead.
On the topic of test data, when you're working like this, would you here start adding what are they called? This development data, or would you manually create the test case or the staffing need here in your application while you're developing?
That's a good question. If I really should add it to the development data. I almost never actually do that. And what ends up happening is we have the development seeds rake task, and every once in a while someone realizes something needs to be there because it wasn't there and gets added. So yeah. But I don't know that I don't know that we're to the point where we would want to do that yet.
Sure, yeah, maybe the schema is wrong still or something like that.
Right. So we got the action show could not be found. So
the reason I ask is that I reflected that myself, I don't often create that development data, but then you get into trouble when you want to demo a feature,
right?
Whether it's on staging or you end up having to do all this setup manually.
Yeah, it's a good point. So we were now able to get to that page, click on that, and we're now looking to click on create assignment button. So in order to make this test pass, we don't need, we just need to do the button. or a link rather. No, it's a new commitment path. So now what it's doing is it's checking to see whether the project field is filled out. And it's not. And that's because we didn't tell it to fill out the project. So now we have a little bit of a, when it comes to test-driven development, I have a little bit of a thing is like, do we drop down to a controller spec before we start building out the controller? What would you normally do, Demeter?
I think normally I would create the controller spec. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think I probably don't, especially if I have feature spec already, and I don't end up doing it until the controller deviates from like what I would consider a standard controller. But I don't think the alternative is wrong. So let's do it the way that you would do it.
Maybe to amend what I was saying, it's a general thing. I would drop down to the next level.
Mhm.
You're right. For a controller, I might not, but if I'm dealing with a different object hierarchy, so for example, I have a model and then I have some kind of extracted object or something on a relation, I would then try to flesh that out with a test.
So do you want to add it or not?
What's at the end? Well, not at the end of the day, but by the time you open the pull request, would you like to have a controller test here?
I think it depends on what this controller ends up doing.
All right. I'm good enough with the feature test.
Okay.
Because it's really allowing us to actually, we've been running the same test over and over again, and we have gotten a lot of leverage from it. So I'm happy to continue with one test.
Okay. So still getting the same failure. I set an instance variable with staffing need. So commitment controller, I'm going to guess we can already set parameters. And the way to find out, yeah, so we're in the new action, we are calling new with parameters. So that's good because it means then we only need to do I actually don't know whether it's project ID or not. We'll find out. Oh. So Satish asks, is there a case the feature test won't cover that a controller test will cover? And I think the short answer is yeah, like anytime you're doing anything that is like fiddly stuff in a controller, I wouldn't write a feature spec for that. I would be first trying to write a controller spec for it. Because feature specs are really, it's hard to be fine-grained with them, and they have more overhead, they're slower. Do you agree?
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's not working, and I realize that the reason why is we need to say commitment.
Nested params.
Yeah, because that's the format that it's. So it made it to checking start date field. And this is now going to be starts on. Right? This is the actual page. Yeah, starts on and ends on. Starts on, ends on. What page did it end up on? Oh, it's a lowercase o, and capybara is case sensitive by default for field names. So expected 11/6 and got 10/30, which is the end of this week. And that's what happens when you don't populate a start or end date. It pre-fills it with this week. And so that's what we're seeing there.
Shows you the advantage of having someone who works on the code base day to day.
Yeah.
I would not have been able to figure out that failure as fast.
Yeah. So I've written this calling an ends on method on the staffing need, but that method doesn't exist. So I think we can add it. Oh, typo storm there. Does this look right? It returns the date that is weeks after the start date. Staffing needs starts on weeks. So I can't tell whether this is totally right because I don't know these actual dates. And also ultimately it should be the end of the week. And I don't know whether that's the end of the week. So to make this easier, I'm going to change it to this week.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought what we have the assumption that a week starts on Monday, I think, for our scheduling, and a project would have a length in weeks, so 1 week minimum.
Right, and the weekends on Sunday is the way. So it's Monday through Sunday. As November 5th. So I think that this, Copilot automatically made it a build stub, which is not right. I want build. So Copilot, it's great, but you've really got to know what you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to introduce errors and not necessarily know that what's happening. Okay, so we have the staffing need model. I like to not because jump right to the implementation. Just running the spec one more time. Okay, everything's wired up correctly. And so now starts on plus weeks, and then we need to say, well, actually, let's show that this fails because it's not the end of the week. Oh, did our spec add 2 weeks? It added 2 weeks. What's next Sunday? The 12th. I'm doing that math right?
Sunday is the 12th, yeah.
Okay, we expected.
What start date did you use? That would be the
I
30th,
used the 30th.
which is a Monday. Yeah. Oh, yeah, because if you add 2 weeks, then it's Monday to Monday. We have an off by 1 error.
Yep. Okay. So
I mean, in the implementation.
So we actually want to subtract 1 from the number of weeks in order to get that number of weeks staffed.
From the number of days, isn't it? Or
So if we want 2 weeks to be and then here's what I'm thinking. Oh, let me write
end
it
of
out.
week. Yeah.
So that would, I believe this is going to give us the right date. Yeah. How do we feel about that? Lola, how does looking at that method make you feel?
Yeah. Well. Okay. I think it
Just
looks
an emotion. How does it make you feel emotionally?
okay.
I'm just kidding.
I'm speechless for now. Actually, okay.
No, what I would do is I would sort of flag that in my head as like, okay, I might change that later, but I've made the spec pass. I don't know about both of you.
I think any math here on this could be sort of confusing.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we put it in a method.
Mm-hmm.
What we may want to have is a few extra test cases for that computation.
Yeah, so like what? Like
particularly, I'm kind of wondering what happens if the start date is in the middle of the week. Could that ever happen?
yeah, it could happen. And we're not accounting for that. So let's write a spec for that. And then actually it's suggesting this spec, which would be a good spec. So this is doing on Tuesday of the week, and it should get you the same end date, I think. Or would we want, this is a matter of both preference and expectations around someone. If a project starts on Wednesday, say, or Tuesday or Wednesday, and we say it lasts for 2 weeks, are we saying that it's going to last exactly 2 weeks and it's going to end at the end of the second week? Or are we saying that we're really saying it's a certain number of days? And if it started on Tuesday or Wednesday, then it needs to go to Tuesday or Wednesday of the following week.
I would not answer this right now.
Mm-hmm.
I would mark the test as pending or failing.
Where's your conviction, man? We need.
No, you know what? I was looking at the time, and it's always. I mean, now we're constrained by, I guess, the
Yeah.
PM session, but also in a project, you have to at some point you need to focus on the right things,
Right.
and maybe the exact calculation of the end date is really important in the project, or maybe it's not. And I think here we're trying to get to something usable that we can actually click through. And this is an implementation detail that it doesn't get us closer.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I've just added the spec for just what happens when it's 1 week, to show that it's the end of just 1 week. And you're suggesting, I think I so rarely do this. It's exit. Is that what it is? Yeah. And to your point, I've forgotten where we were. So I'm going to go back up and run the feature spec, and hopefully that'll help pinpoint where in the process we were. Yes.
I should point out it was also my idea to test edge cases, so I got us into the mess in the first place.
So what we're getting in the starts on field, we expected a time and we got a date. And that is just because we are in our spec expecting a time. We're doing time math and getting times. So this is failing on the end date. We expected 11/26 and we got 11/19. Oh. Starts on one week from now. And I did the same when I was writing the spec. I did the same thing that we ended up realizing when we were writing the method. I went out 3 weeks and did the end of the week. But if you're scheduling for 2 weeks, you just go out to 2 weeks and the end of the week. And then we unable to find the option person 1 in the select, and that is because only people with positions are schedulable. Again, that's the kind of thing where you sort of need to know the app in order to jump to the solution that quickly. So we expected to find the text project name on the page, and we didn't find it. I'm just going to the HTML for the generated page just to see what page we're even on and what it is. There's a lot of stuff here. We got a flash message commitment for 8 days of work was successfully created. But there's no there's like no schedule shown on this page for this person. And my guess is that the reason why is the person's not actually in a billable department, and by default, the schedule only shows billable people. If we go to the person factory, we might have a billable. Nope. Okay, so the way that we do this and then we need to make it oh, is it show on schedule load? It is show on schedule load, which is separate from whether it's billable or not. That's the way it used to work. And Copilot was looking at the files in the schema and knew that that's not how it works. That's cool. Well, we got the same error. Let's see if we got the same. Yeah, we're not seeing that. So I'm looking at the time. This is cool. We should be able to get to a good ending spot right when we expect to end. So let's do what you were suggesting and add a development seed for. So we're going to create a staffing need for this project. I don't know what skills. There's a Rails skill and it's 2 weeks. And it's a dev prime task. Now, what it's doing now is it's creating a whole bunch of fake data. This uses a combination of factory bot and faker to generate realistic looking names too. So the people we're using faker for that. Didn't expect it to take quite so long.
I'm puzzled by assume seed data migrated up to timestamp.
We have in this app, we're using the seed migration gem, which is a gem for having data migration, the concept of data migrations. And there's only one, but this, as far as I know, there's only one, but that's where you're saying we have a bunch of seed data migrations, and the current one we're on is here. So when you're creating the database, jump to this one, I think is how it works. But I honestly don't know why this is taking so long. I don't think it usually takes this long.
I ran bin setup today, and it did take this long.
Oh, okay.
If what could be happening if it's then going to that version and running migrations in sequence, that might be causing the slowness. Because you, by default in Rails, you would assume you would assume that it loads the schema in the database.
So I had a typo, unfortunately. It's skills. So now we need to run it again.
I was going to ask you something else. You have a good workflow with the fading test and opening the let's call it the screenshot or the snapshot of the HTML. Do you ever change the drivers to what's the inverse of headless? So we have the headless driver and then the painted driver.
I do that. I would do that automatically when it's a more complicated page, because finding what you're looking for in the HTML becomes really difficult. So I would say most of the time I end up changing the driver if I really want to get a good picture of what's happening. What about you?
I almost never look at if I'm downloading something from CI, I would look at the HTML. Sometimes I do. I think depending on the gem you're using, it might automatically open that page with the error. But that never looks right because it's not linked to the correct style sheets or something.
Right. Yeah, I mostly was using it just to see what text was actually there. And for that, it's usually quick to do. But anything beyond that, you're not getting a good picture of what it actually looks like.
Yeah, I guess it also depends on the complexity of the page.
Oh, man. What is this? Undefined method each for skill. Oh, man. I had such a good idea about adding this here and running that, because you gave me that idea earlier, and I was like, oh, this would be a great way to see it. I guess we could also go to, it's too late now. Our data has already been wiped out. We've got to let it do its thing. But we could have also gone to console and create it. So there's no UI right now for creating staffing needs, I guess is the point. Which isn't the primary flow that I expect. I expect most of the staffing needs to flow from opportunities. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask how then this staffing needs already appear in some way in production. How does that happen from opportunities?
It's just a you mean on the Basecamp to-do list?
No, I got confused. Of course, we just created staffing needs, the table.
It used to exist, and then when the table got renamed to estimates.
All right. So my question is, we did this work now. How do you split and ship the work? Would you merge a pull request with this and then another one with the rest of the workflow? Would you wait until we have the whole thing?
I would try to identify the minimum functionality that would actually be useful to people. And I think for this, it's probably being able, when we say, okay, a project is actually going to happen, project is automatically generated, and copying the estimates into staffing needs for that project and then being able to click the button like we're doing, populate the assignment field. But then right now we don't have a concept of the staffing need going away once it's been filled. So we'll need to do that. And then once we have that, I think that that's probably shippable.
So if I understood correctly, you wouldn't create a form to create a staffing need, but you would generate the staffing need based on existing information.
I think so. I think that that is the primary flow. And so I think if we had that, it would be shippable. So let's click through here. We got our bad looking page, which we'll improve later. Oh, we never. Where's the button? The button's like somewhere. Let's see if we can fix that quick, and then we'll just so we can see it. Staffing need, show. Staffing need, index. Someone just rang my doorbell.
Telling you to end the stream.
There we go. And then we got the link, creates the assignment. Oh, we only did it for 2 weeks, so it's hard to tell. But yes, that is the correct day. It's the end of 2 weeks from now. The project is populated. And we just need to choose who's going to work on it. And then if we don't choose someone, we get oh, why did it do that? There's probably some quirk around that person not being billable or something like that, not having any days where they normally work. So we'll probably want to, it looks like the commitment controller sends you back to where you came from when you're scheduling, which might be nice because, but at the very least, it's probably wrong because we might want to go back to either the staffing needs list or the schedule itself. Okay, well, we made pretty good progress today going from starting a big new feature, talking through where it could be, how it could work, and getting a base model and implementation off the ground. I would say that if I was just to keep on working on this, it'd probably be a couple more days worth of work to get it to the point where we were just talking about of having it shippable, maybe 1 or 2 more days. So that's what I was looking at. Any thoughts or comments from the two of you? Thank you both for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Lola.
Yeah,
Thank you for working with me on this. It was a lot of fun. And thanks everybody for watching. We really appreciate it. Again, if you need help creating your web or mobile application or improving an existing application, you can always get in touch with us at thoughtbot.com/hire us. We are available and we'd love to work with you. So thanks very much. Have a great weekend, everybody. And we'll see you next week back on the stream.